We're still talking about some guidelines that we should observe when we are involved in apologetics. And one of the guidelines is to have a balance, particularly when you talk about faith, particularly when you talk about God. You have to make sure that your involvement in apologetics does not hurt the overall purpose. Overall purpose is what? Certainty in faith. Certainty in faith. Overall purpose, the highest purpose in da'wah is the connection between people and their Lord, to improve, to strengthen, to promote, to sweeten the connection between people and their Lord. Can we hurt this doing apologetics? Yes, you could. How? Basically, there are two ways of acquiring faith. In some respect, there are two ways, and I'll talk about the other ways as well. But in one respect, there is natural faith and probabilistic faith. Probabilistic faith and natural faith. Probabilistic faith is when John Locke, who is a British empiricist, one of the British philosophers, said, proportion your assent to the evidence. The Christian apologists started to build like a list of evidences on every, doctrine or every question they were defending. So, would that hurt or help? That would help, as long as you are careful that your eagerness to amount more and more evidence will not make you cite weak evidence that will basically bring the roof down on your head. Because when you are so eager to mention more evidences, at the end you will start to mention weak ones. And when you mention weak ones and people come from the top of the list, your strongest evidence, and they find the evidence sort of waning, and until it becomes very flimsy, maybe all they will remember is the weak ones at the end, and that will divert them from the truth, not convince them of the truth. So this is something to keep in mind. Also, when you mention 200 proofs, that would make people think that it is a very difficult proposition. You needed to mention 200 proofs because the initial proposition was hard to conceive of, so you did need to mention 200 proofs. It's like this woman who said, when they told her Imam al-Razi has basically 1,000 answers to doubts and misconceptions, and she said, I don't need them. He only has 1,000 answers because he had 1,000 doubts. I don't have any, so I don't need any of the answers. That is called what? Natural faith. That is what the Scottish realists speak of, and that is what contemporary people like Alvin Plantinga, for instance, promote. To them, Alvin Plantinga, to them, if you don't believe in God, you have a problem in your belief-making mechanisms. You have like an error somewhere in your software, a problem in your belief-making mechanisms. It is the natural thing that we talked about before. The scholars of Islam talked about the interior sense and talked about also through inductive reasoning and through your interior sense. It is the ilm al-daruri, the irresistible knowledge that you feel inside you. It is, the God gene in Dean Hamer's terminology. It's the God gene. It's the hardwiring. So when you do this, because as an apologist, you do want to mention intellectual that's what you're doing. But keep in mind, don't overdo it. Don't mention weak evidence. And at the same time, remind people of this irresistible drive inside them that tells them about the existence and perfection of God. That this is not it. Whatever I would mention now, teleological argument, cosmological argument, ontological argument, whatever I would mention now, is not it. Don't forget that that there is something inside you that is pointing to God. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. We will show them our signs in the horizons and in themselves. So don't forget about this when you're doing your apologetics. Then steer the discussion back to the essentials. It is important because people always drift away from the essentials, and people have many concerns about many things and sort of many occupations or preoccupations that you want to steer the discussion back, particularly when you're doing apologetics one-on-one. Learn about the person and root cause, and we did talk about this earlier, because it is important that you customize your discourse for the purpose of, the audience, for the interest of the audience. You're not doing this for your own interest or your own victory. It is for the interest of the audience. One of the guidelines, and I put this as the last guideline, not because it is the least important, but I wanted to conclude that section by this guideline. Half of knowledge is, I do not know. So you will do a lot more harm to speak of something that you are not well-versed in than just to stay silent and say, I will ask and come back to you. That is always a safe way out of like a difficult sort of situation. I will ask and I'll come back to you, because you are not expected basically to be the master of all sciences. This was a Yaqeen study that was done to map doubts within the Muslim community, and they felt that doubts are clustered around 3 nodes. One of them is moral and social concerns. The other one is philanthropic and scientific concerns. And the third, being religious does not make one happy, not feeling welcomed by your community, death of a loved one. This would be under personal trauma. So one node is moral and social concerns, the other one is philanthropic and scientific concerns, and the third one is personal trauma. So moral and social concerns would be a role of women, for instance. Some of our sisters that have an issue with some of the rules or rulings, bad things people do in the name of religion, intolerance some religious people show or exhibit. Under philanthropic, that's not philanthropic, maybe philosophical. I know where philanthropic came from. Okay. So under philosophical and scientific concerns would be uncertainty over the existence of God, problem of evil, debate over evolution versus creation, certain beliefs or practices don't make sense. And under personal trauma, being religious does not make one happy, not feeling welcomed by the community, death of a loved one, and so on and so forth. So when doing apologetics, it is very important that you identify the root cause, you identify the source of the crisis, because that, particularly when you want to customize the delivery to different most of the time, if people have a personal trauma, they will not, the study may be skewed because most of the time, even if the study showed that, moral objections or something of that nature would be how people behave and how Muslims behave, maybe that is the greatest grievance some people have against the religious community, which makes them have grievances against the religion itself. It's a misplaced grievance because your grievances against the religious community should not mean grievances against the religion. Anyway, but many times it's also personal trauma that is being disguised by other concerns. But people will always shy away from saying, I don't like it because I'm just not welcome enough. Building certainty will always trump the fighting doubts. So you want to focus on building certainty, and certainty, acquisition of faith, acquisition of certainty happens through association, persuasion, and actualization. As we say for children in general, it's mainly association, right? You are who you are because that's your people. Your people are Muslim, your people are this. So it's association. But for many people, they continue actually, their biggest drive to stay in a religion is association for many people. It's not only children. And that's sad, but that's the reality. And as we mentioned before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke of this concept in Surah Al-Ankabut. قال إنما اتخذتم من دون الله أوثانا مودة بينكم في الحياة الدنيا. Persuasion, that is, so apologists, they focus mainly on persuasion, how to put a systematic argument in defense of any doctrine. Actualization is your experience of faith that we will talk about now. It is when your faith is actualized, when you taste it. ذوق التصديق طعم العدة. When belief savors the taste of the promises. When you savor the taste of belief, and your belief savors the taste of God's promises, and you find that sweetness, that comfort, that certainty, that strength inside you, that is when you own your faith. That is when you have ownership of your faith. And that is faith that is unshakable. You just, even at the intellectual level, you could still shake it. But at this level, experiential faith that has been actualized, faith that has been tasted, you can't shake that one. So if our interest is basically building certainty, and our interest is improving people's connection with their Lord, then yes, our focus, because of the job that we have basically took on, is persuasion, but that should not blind us from the very important the two other important factors, particularly actualization of faith. Then, in this case, you do want to produce output also that will invite people to the actualization of faith, soften their hearts, that will tell them of how to go about actualizing your faith. We were talking about it in the Jum'ah yesterday when a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him about how hardened his heart has become, or complained to him about how hard his heart has become. And the Prophet ﷺ said, إن أردت أن يلين قلبك فأطعم المسكين وامسح على رأس اليتيم. So if you want your heart to be softened, feed the poor and caress the head of the orphan. Feed the poor and caress the head of the orphan. Your heart will be softened. You'll be more deserving of certainty. Your connection with Allah will be sweeter. You will be more deserving of the spiritual imports, the waridat, that will increase your certainty. So spiritual labor is required for your faith to be actualized, and we have to stress this fact. Association, maybe you can't do much about it except that you produce output also to provide encouragement to the people in charge in different Muslim communities about how they, the masajid should assume bigger roles than what they currently do, for the social networking and for this, establishing of community with moist bonds between its members, so on. In fact, in some churches, they break up any church that reaches more than 50 families. And I don't remember exactly which denomination now. Do you remember? Does anyone remember? I mentioned it before. They break up the church that reaches more than 50 families. And why? Because it doesn't become sort of cozy anymore. After, the church becomes like big enough to exceed 50 families, it's not cozy anymore. You don't have the bonds anymore. And I'm not saying that you need to do this, but I'm just saying that you need to be observant of this particular aspect. Types of input that we benefit from to build our faith: emotional, intellectual, and spiritual experiences. This is basically another way of presenting the previous slide. Emotional, intellectual, and spiritual experiences. These are the different types of input. Sources of input: the message itself, immersion in the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the way of the first community. That immersion is extremely important. Corruptibility of fitrah that we talked about several times, how to rehabilitate the fitrah. Two things: spiritual labor, to get those spiritual imports, those waridat that will corroborate your faith, strengthen your faith, promote your faith, sweeten your faith, and immersion in the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of His Prophet, and the way of the first community. So, sources of input, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِهِمْ أَنَّا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ يُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَرَحْمَةً وَذِكْرَى لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. And is it not sufficient for them that we reveal to you the book which is recited to them? Indeed, in that is a mercy and a reminder for a people who believe. The other source of input is basically the universal signs. Learn and reflect. Immersion in the Quran and Sunnah. Be thoughtful. Don't take things around you for granted. Be thoughtful. You could be looking at, some atheists, for instance, could be looking at the most beautiful scenery in front of their eyes, and they can't see beyond it. They can't see through it. Or that they could be looking at the most perfect equation, the cosmological constant, the weak nuclear forces, the strong nuclear and electromagnetic forces, all of this fine-tuning of the universe, and they don't see beyond it. That's it. But be thoughtful, reflect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ وَلَمْ يَكْفِ بِرَبِّكَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. But is it not sufficient concerning your Lord, and that is it not sufficient concerning your Lord that He is over all things a witness? أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِ بِرَبِّكَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. Because all the signposts will lead you to God, and once you are there, all the signposts are not needed anymore. Then experience faith. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. The first is in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second is in Surah Al-Ankabut. And fear Allah, and Allah teaches you, and Allah is knowing of all things. That's in Surah Al-Baqarah. So fear Allah, and Allah teaches you. You will be deserving of guidance, you will be deserving of knowledge when you fear Allah, when you have taqwa. You have taqwa, Allah gives you knowledge. Which knowledge? Beneficial knowledge. Because even if you don't have taqwa, Allah can give you knowledge. Information, not knowledge. Not ma'rifah, at least, recognition, just information. وَالَّذِينَ جَهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا, and those who strive for us, we will surely guide them to our ways. And indeed, Allah is with the doers of good. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And this is a beautiful statement from Ibn Ata rahimahullah ta'ala, where he said, لا تترك الذكر لعدم حضورك مع الله فيه لأن غفلتك عن وجود ذكره أشد من غفلتك في وجود ذكره فعسى أن يرفعك من ذكر مع وجود غفلة إلى ذكر مع وجود يقظة ومن ذكر مع وجود يقظة إلى ذكر مع وجود حضور ومن ذكر مع وجود حضور إلى ذكر مع وجود غيبة عما سوى المذكور وما ذلك على الله بعزيز. Do not abandon dhikr because you don't feel your presence. You don't feel your presence with Allah. The point here is continue your striving, continue your pursuit of the pleasure of Allah, nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but don't make the sweetness your goal. Make His pleasure your goal, and then the sweetness will come. Because if you make the sweetness of faith your goal, you're looking for the sweetness, you're not looking for His pleasure. The whole thing is wrong. You know, you're not going to get the sweetness because you're looking for it. If you're looking for His pleasure, you will get the sweetness of faith. If you're looking for the sweetness of faith, you're not devoted to Him and to His pleasure. How do you get the sweetness of faith if you're not devoted to Him and to His pleasure? So don't abandon dhikr because you don't feel your presence with Allah, because your forgetfulness of His remembrance is worse than your forgetfulness in His remembrance. Perhaps He will elevate your dhikr from heedlessness to alertness, and from alertness to being in the divine presence, and from presence to absence from all other than the remembered. To have basically, the fana al-shuhud, which is the vanishment of perception, except the mashhud, the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he said, and that's not difficult for Allah. So persevere is what we want to remind people. Persevere is what we want. We want to remind people. And actually, before I get to it, there was a statement by Marcus Aurelius. I skipped that statement where he said, he was an emperor and a philosopher at the same time, which is something that's uncommon. But he said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. And this is extremely important because, that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Fear Allah and Allah will teach you. You will have to do the right thing to be taught more. But if you learn and your learning takes you nowhere, then that knowledge is against you. It is not for you. That is not knowledge that will get you any closer. That is knowledge that will push you farther away from Allah. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said to Ibn al-Qayyim, if you don't find the sweetness of faith after your action, but that is not because you're looking for the sweetness of faith, using the sweetness of faith as alama, as a sign. He said, if you don't find the sweetness of faith, suspect your action. فَإِنَّ الرَّبَّ شَكُورٌ. Because the Lord is grateful. And if you're doing it for Him, He will reward you. And the reward, will be immediate. The immediate reward in this life for good work that is for the sake of Allah is that sweetness of faith and that certainty in your heart and that comfort in your heart. So suspect your action if you don't have it. But you have it, because also you have to be realistic about that sweetness of faith. We're not Abu Bakr and we're not Umar, we're not get that much of it. So we have enough that keeps us stable in our spirituality and keeps us stable in our psyche also, or psychology. Resisting doubts. The first thing when we talk about resisting doubts is whether these are doubts that are that are blameworthy? Are these doubts that are blameworthy, or these are just thoughts that are crossing your mind? They're causing you distress, but these are not doubts. You're not doubting God. You're having thoughts cross your mind. That's where the Prophet ﷺ was approached by some of the Sahaba who said to them, we find thoughts inside us that we would wish that we would vanish before we speak of them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَوَجَدْتُمُ ذَاكَ صَرِيحُ الْإِيمَانِ. Have you found that? That is a clear proof on faith. Clear proof on faith. Why? That distress, that resentment of the thoughts that you have inside is a clear proof on your faith. So first thing, figure out if these are true doubts or just thoughts crossing your mind. But don't allow them to settle. If they are settling in your mind, push them away, find the proper answers. Don't seek doubts to dispel them, because that is like someone, a frail person, exposing themselves to 100 germs, basically to fight all the germs off and to increase their mana'ah, their immunity. That doesn't happen this way. You know, you don't just expose yourselves to 100 germs to increase your immunity. Don't look for doubts to dispel them. When they arrive, address them. And address them urgently, because if you let them fester in your mind, they'll cause damage, internal damage, that you may not be able to recoup from. Don't allow them to settle. Don't make them feel comfortable inside. And don't allow the shaitan to basically, to whisper into your mind major things, because that means that the shaitan has become very comfortable inside. And the shaitan feels that he can actually dare to do this with you. They may be your way to certainty. They may be your way to certainty. And here's what Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah said about certainty for skeptics. Some people are skeptics by nature. They are skeptical by nature. That's just their nature. Is there a way for them to reach certainty and to have certainty and to enjoy faith like the rest of the people who are not skeptical by nature? He says, yes, there is. And he says, and I'm not going to read the Arabic, but he says, one who bases their belief and love on many evidences that bring about certainty and reveal the invalidity of the passing misgivings, they will not be like one whose basis of belief is inferior to that. So he's saying proportion your assent to the evidence, basically. But he's not saying proportion your assent to the evidence, but he's saying that belief that is based on more evidences is greater than belief that is based on less evidences. So, moreover, the one who was granted some knowledge or exposure that compels them to believe is not like one who is exposed to misgivings, and they willingly seek to remove them through contemplation and research. No sane person would doubt that knowledge that is based on a multiplicity of strong evidences as well as proofs on the invalidity of the counter misgivings and the proofs of the opponents is not like that which is based on one proof without knowing of the counter arguments. So he's saying for the skeptics, the evidentialist approach is prescribed for them. They're just skeptics. The evidentialist approach is prescribed for them. So for the skeptics, they have their own way to certainty as well. The intellectually inclined, because there are people who are spiritually inclined and there are people who are intellectually inclined. And the intellectually inclined who are also skeptics, there is a way for them. There is hope for them as well at the end of the day. And then, so we said they may be your way to certainty. So if you happen to be intellectually inclined and if you happen to be skeptical, then work on certainty. Work on your certainty by basically basing it on more and more multiplicity of evidences. And then allow them not to erode into yaqeen. Allow them not to erode into yaqeen, because there is no hurry. There is no hurry. Where are you going? You want to be an atheist? Why are you hurried? Why are you in a rush? You know, like if you die, you know, if atheism is actually true, you don't lose anything, you know. So just like, you know, calm down. There is no hurry. And so don't allow doubts to erode into your yaqeen. Al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak. Certainty should not be negated by doubt. You have come here through certainty. And if you have not come here through certainty, but you came here just because your parents were Muslims, then it would be worthwhile for any sane person, any wise person, to first invest in what you have. Don't leave the bird in your hand to catch 10 birds in the sky. Just keep the bird in your hand. So invest in what you have. You know, try to figure out a way to reach certainty, and take your time, because this is not an easy issue. This is not, particularly if you're surrounded by a culture that is not necessarily conducive to faith, it will be difficult. But if you were given something by your parents, if you were given a gift by your parents or something by your parents, they passed on something to you, before you let go of it, invest in figuring out if this is the truth or not. And that would be sort of what wise people would do. Even if your parents were not the best image or representation of that truth, because we have to separate between the religion and the religious community, particularly when we're talking about individuals, not the collective. We're talking about individuals. If they were not the best representation, still, they passed on this to you. This undoubtedly has some merit to make 1.6 billion people believe in it. Invest in it before you make up your mind. And then there is no hurry whatsoever when it comes to atheism. There was this poet who said: زعم المنجم والطبيب كلاهما لا تبعث الأجساد قلت إليكما إن صح قولكما فلست بخاسر أو صح قولي فالخسار عليكما. So the astrologer and the physician, physicians had a bad reputation at that time. So the astrologer and physician claimed that bodies will not be resurrected. Bodies will not be resurrected. I said, go away. إليكما, leave me alone. إن صح قولكما, if what you say is true, I lose nothing. We'll all turn into dust. In fact, based on Pascal's wager, the greatest argument against Pascal's wager is that you lose the dunya. But it has been well proven that you don't lose the dunya. That religious people have it better here in this dunya before the hereafter. Statistically, studies have proven this. When it comes to mental health, when it comes to physical health, studies have proven this. So that is another support for Pascal's wager. So in صح قولكم فلست بخاسر, if you're right, I lose nothing. أو صح قولي فالخسار عليكم. But if I am right, you lose everything, because it is about eternity. It is about eternity. قولوا قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.